monsters and ghosts to otherworldly beings. Join the explorers as they venture into the darkest realms, seeking the truth to what goes bump in the night.
Well, good evening and welcome to Explorers Seekers of the Truth, episode 26. Tonight, as always, I am Chad Charlesworth, and I'm joined by my best friend and co-host, Lesson Cabbage. So how you doing tonight, buddy?
Good. Actually, considering, thank you for asking. How are you?
Let's see. We have had 5 deaths of pretty important people in the last since Saturday, Friday night. I was actually telling Les before we came on air, I killed in what my story will be a king cobra copperhead hybrid last night. It was hanging on my wall when I came home from the gym outside my house. I'm walking up to the front door and I see something hanging on the wall. So I realized quickly it was a snake hanging on the wall, and proceeded to stand there and look at it until my wife could run out with the hoe. Of course, I asked her to shovel. I got the hoe. And so I took it off the wall with the hoe and chopped off its head. And, I'm not afraid of snakes. I just don't like snakes, especially, snakes that are, looking at me like I look tasty. So besides that, I guess I'm okay.
Well, that's good. I had a bit of a frantic pre-show day, which is not, it seems to be a reoccurring theme for me. I'm always running late or something's going on, but my one monitor took a crap on me and I had to run in the house and grab one of 2 that we have in the spare room. And luckily one worked. So we're up and running. We're operational. Thank God.
Yeah, but, that's great.
Yeah. So with that being said, I guess I could do my normal agenda thing there.
Yeah, go ahead.
For anybody who wants to get in touch with us, you could go to our website, www.explorersgroup.com. We are on Twitter at Explorers Group. We're on Facebook, obviously, at facebook.com/Explorers Group. You can reach us there. You can reach us online, on our website, wherever you want. If you have a story that you want to share or maybe a topic you'd like for us to discuss, reach out and let us know, and we'd be more than happy to review it and review your request. And if it fits the criteria, we'll make a show out of it. So, get in touch with us there.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah. I also want to update everybody about our King of the Cryptid tournament. I kind of forgot about it last week because we had Linda Godfrey on. Sasquatch won in a landslide. I was very surprised by the results. I kind of actually was betting on Patty or the Loch Ness Monster to win, but I've been wrong before. But
I had my money on the Squatch.
Well, I just thought Patty would win because it's more of an iconic Bigfoot creature,
right?
That is more I guess more people got into Bigfoot or interested in Bigfoot because of Patty than just the generic, and I don't want to be mean and say generic term, but the term Sasquatch. So I really just thought, Patty might have had a better chance, or the Loch Ness Monster. Right. So, that's what I kind of was thinking. And, Sasquatch won, which was really cool. We are probably going to do that again next year. So we'll have some fun with it. We'll probably run some other little bracket polls throughout the year. We have a special one that'll probably pop up around summertime, and we'll, lay that out for everybody. Hey, welcome.
Brenda from Ireland. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for the kind words. Welcome.
Yeah. And I kind of, I had posted, about Art Bell's passing, and, Les and I kind of talked a little bit this week. We were both very busy, so we didn't really get to talk a lot about it. And I read something, and it was kind of one of those things where I could tell the person that posted the question was kind of trolling people, but they had asked, what Art Bell did that was so great. And
what did he do?
Well, the thing is, he helped foster, paranormal, cryptozoology, ufology, even conspiracy, as much as we don't cover that stuff.
Yeah.
He helped foster this. And for people that understand the history of radio, Art Bell wasn't the first person to do a show like that he was doing, but he was the one who got people on and gave them a platform to speak on their point of view. Whether he agreed with it, disagreed with it, he allowed them to speak. And, he would ask questions at times, and some people, sometimes he went soft on people and didn't really go for the kill. And, there was times where he cut interviews short and just was like, okay, I'll talk, thank you for coming on, and, see you later. Because he didn't, at a certain point, the viewpoint became extremist.
Mm-hmm.
So, that was one thing Art did. For me, doing this, and like I had posted, he was one of the reasons why I wanted to do this. Mm-hmm. In my feelings on radio or any of this, podcasting or anything like that, my real inspirations are guys like Art Bell, Opie and Anthony. As much as we're not doing the shock jockey stuff, a lot of my one this has come from people like Art and Opie and Anthony. So it's one of those things, like when people post stuff and what did they contribute? Well, they created an open forum for us, for us to do this. If it wasn't for people like Art Bell, coming on and opening a show up and saying, look, we're going to talk about the Mothman. We're going to talk about Dogman. We're going to talk about Bigfoot. We're going to talk about ghosts. We're going to talk to, George Lutz and people who were, whether you believe the Lutz family story or not, people who were involved in, alleged paranormal. And we got a window that, we would never have had if it wasn't for somebody like Art. And, I'm not a huge fan of George Norrie. I'm no longer a big fan of Coast to Coast, but I still to this day will listen to old Art Bell interviews on YouTube, or on Somewhere in Time when they run it through Coast to Coast. Mm-hmm. So, really that's, something that made me want to be here doing this. Was he was one of those people that, has given me an idea and a passion for doing this. So, however you knew him or however he touched you, I think we're all lucky to have had somebody like that, that has helped create what we're doing and has shown the mainstream that we are not all crazy tinfoil hat wearing people holed up in a trailer somewhere in the mountains. We're actually professional people, doctors and lawyers and, stuff like that. And, even ditch diggers. We all, as security guards, whatever, we all enjoyed something about that show. So, that was, kind of a tribute, on my part to Art, and what he gave us. So we want to get into tonight's topic, though. I don't want to sit here and just drone on about something. So
no, he was a great entertainer, and he was very knowledgeable. I mean, I think he deserves a spot, to have his, for lack of better terms, his legacy, complimented and remembered. So no, you didn't drag anything on, buddy. That was good. That was very nice. So you want to talk about tonight's topic, because it's ironic that Sasquatch won the Monster Madness.
Yeah, that's actually King of the Cryptid. Excuse me.
Oh, sorry. That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we can't say monster, or we can't say madness, because that, with another M in front of it, becomes a completely crazy lawsuit. Yep. But yeah,
King of the Cryptids. King of the Cryptids.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, so our topic tonight, Sasquatch did win. That's kind of why I came in with the whole, remembering that part of it. So you want to do the honors and address the topic for this evening?
You can. I'm just kidding. No, I'll do it. That's fine.
Well, okay.
Tonight, episode 26. Tonight's episode we're titling Squatch on the Farm, because tonight's topic is obviously about Sasquatch, but it's more of personal experiences that my family, Chad, and other people that lived near me at the time had experienced. And it's basically more or less talking about the property where I had lived previously to where I am now. It's not far from here, literally 10 minutes down the road. We were renting a farmhouse outside of town that was on 150 private acres. And it was a beautiful area. The front yard was like the size of 2 football fields. There was a horse pasture, a little glen down by the barn. There were 3 ponds. One was a fishing pond. One was a natural fed spring. And the other was a swimming pond. And there were 150 acres surrounding the property that were wooded. The whole property was backed up to the broad mountain, and it was beautiful because you could see the rocky outcrops from the glacier stone that when you would look up at the mountain. But point of that is, the area that we lived in, obviously we were on a farm, and all the neighboring areas are heavily farmed by the local farmers. So there's an abundance of food sources. You're backed up right to the mountain, which behind that goes right into a small town, but then beyond that is just vast stretches of wilderness. So as we start talking about some of these stories, just keep in mind that, the area is has high potential for the possibility of a Sasquatch to inhabit. Like I said, you have the farms that provide food. The fishing ponds on the property were always stocked with huge, large carp, which are going to be an integral part of tonight's story, as well as other fish. So you had those kind of proteins available. There were all kind of fruit-bearing trees and bushes on the property as well. Pear, apple, elderberry, blueberry, raspberries grew down there. Blackberries grew down there. Everything. And then, like I said, it backed up to the mountain. So on the top of the mountain, you had a lot of the old glacier deposits from when the Ice Age, when the glacier was coming through back in the time of the Ice Age. This area of Pennsylvania is riddled with those deposits. So, and they're not just like rocks; they're huge, massive, like as the size of a house boulders, and they're all stacked on top of each other, and they all have little caves and crevasses and outcrops and everything else that you could imagine for these creatures, as well as other like bear and other animals that could all stay in there and live and survive. So we're going to talk a lot about some of the experiences that I had. Like I said, Chad joined me in a few of them. Some of it's Bigfoot. Most of it is Bigfoot. Some of it is paranormal, but it all kind of, hey, Ricky, thanks for joining in. But there's a lot of correlation to this. So I'm going to start from what I would consider the beginning when we first moved in, some of the first things we'd experienced. We were there for almost 10 years. And then we moved 2 years ago. So, yeah, I guess we'll kind of walk down memory lane that way. Is there anything you wanted to add there, buddy?
Yeah, there is, I think, some short video clips neither on our Facebook or on our YouTube page and on our website then, of some of the areas up on the mountain, a little bit higher up from the actual house and the ponds and stuff like that. Yep. And you can see, I mean, there is plenty of berries and, food sources. And also when you're in this area, yes, there are like roadways that cross through here, but they're not, for the most part, they're not highways. They're not 4 or 5 lanes. It would be a very, 2-lane road, and you could cross those roads and be in, 20 miles of woods with, lakes and, creeks and stuff like that crossing through those woods. So, I mean, you could basically travel probably 20 or 30 miles in most directions and basically be in relatively dense wilderness wooded areas. So just to give you a little more idea on the area, I didn't, think Les did a good job describing it, but I just wanted to kind of point that out.
That's a very good, because we're in the Poconos of Pennsylvania, and the Poconos area, I guess. I don't know what the Poconos, I guess it's commonly known. I don't know. But we're on the lower end, the southern end of the Poconos, or what would be considered the Poconos. But nonetheless, like Chad said too, there are some major highways that run through, but the majority of it are just small 2-lane roads, small back roads, some dirt roads. Like it's pretty rural, and I love it, you know. But I have a picture that I'll bring up here quick of the property. Bring that up. So this is a view from the far corner. This is going like it's a quarter mile from the house up to the road, just about a quarter mile. And this is from the far corner of my yard, or what was my yard. And that's our old house. And then back behind the house, it kind of rolls backwards. And this is this is just a very small picture. If I did a panoramic, if I were able to do that, you would see how it's just a huge piece of property. But as it rolls down back behind the house, it goes into a glen. There's a creek that runs through there. And then there's the ponds. There's a pavilion for picnicking. And then there's a large section of flat forest. And then it goes back up into the mountain. But this is just an idea of what it was like. So, like I said, very rural. It's on 150 private acres. It was beautiful. We truly loved living there, but it just got to the point where the house got way too small because my family was growing larger, and we wanted something of our own. We wanted to be able to customize and make rooms for our daughters that were suited to their personalities. And as much as our landlord was absolutely wonderful, we weren't allowed to paint or change anything, and we wanted something to call our own. You know, now with another little girl on the way, you know, it's glad that we did get the hell out of there, because I don't know where I would put another kid in that tiny little house. But anyway, so that just gives you an idea of what the property looked like.
Yeah. So yes, folks, Les just announced that him and his wife are expecting another child. So
this is little girl number 3. So I'm totally outnumbered.
I'm so totally hoping for a velociraptor, but you know, I guess a little girl will be great. I'll have another niece.
Yeah,
So
that's right. Yeah.
I just wanted a velociraptor this time, but
well, you know, it's funny that, you know, you and I were best friends and all we produce is girls. You know?
Yeah, well, you know, it's easier until they hit teenage years.
Yeah, I know. I'm dreading the teenage years when they're all in sync and moody. That
bad 90s band that you love so much.
Yeah, in sync, yeah. But honestly, I the thing that's gonna, I think, hurt me the most right now, I am like a god to my kids, for lack of better terms. Like my girls, like they look up to me, they want to be with me all the time. They fight over who gets to sit by dad and stuff like that. So it's gonna kill me when they grow up and not want dad to be their hero anymore. But anyways, moving along. So I'm going to start in the beginning of when we had first moved in. Like I said, I guess we moved in back around 2008. The property was all brand new to us. You know, obviously it was, you know, such an experience to go around and you know, look at all the trails that were through the woods and whatnot. It was really great. And during the day, it was such a beautiful piece of property. But what was always weird, thank you, Cleo. What was always weird is at night, the property kind of took on a more ominous, very dark. I don't know how to really explain it. It was different. Like during the day, it was very serene and beautiful and everything. But as soon as the sun goes down, it was almost like it took on a new face. And I always felt uncomfortable for some reason being out there. And I don't know if it was because I was always used to being more in towns, living in towns while growing up, and then going out into the middle of nowhere. I don't know if it was just the change. But there was always a very odd feeling. And as time had gone by, I got more accustomed to it. But you know, it was always a little odd being out in the middle of nowhere. But I guess I want to say it was late in 2008, maybe 2009. I broke my ankle. I was going out. I was taking one of our dogs out for a walk, and it was a little bit of snow, and I didn't like the one freaking patch of macadam that was in the yard had ice on it, and I didn't realize it was icy. It fell, broke my leg. So, anyways, so I was kind of out of commission for a while, and one night we were Leslie and I were watching TV, and we were kind of I don't know, just kind of like not asleep, but you were getting tired, I guess. And we were watching, ironically, I think it was called Paranormal Kids or Paranormal Children or something like that. That Chip Coffey was in it, and he would go around talking to these kids that had psychic abilities or whatever. And we were both lying there. We had two sofas in the living room at the time, and you could look through the doorway into the dining room. And you would have to go behind our table to go to the staircase to go upstairs. And I'm laying there watching this show, and it was kind of ironic because they were talking about a spirit that these kids had noticed. And the one kid goes, he's here. He's here. And then Chip Coffey goes, David is here. And then at that time, I saw something out of the corner of my eye, and I look and I saw my what?
Was that Chip Coffey or Mr. Garrison?
Whatever, it's whoever you want it to be. So I see this person walk past the dining room table. Now that the dining room was dark, there were no lights on or anything like that, but I see this person walk past the dining room table as if they came down from upstairs. They walked past. I saw this person look in at me, like I could see eyes and a nose and stuff, but it was dark. I couldn't make out illicit details or anything because they were going quickly, and it moved and looked and exactly like my wife, like the way she moves and everything, even that, like I heard this whatever coming down the steps, and I saw her walk past the table and everything, and I'm laying there. I said, when the hell did you get up? And she answers me on the couch behind me. She goes, I didn't. And I look over and she's lying on the other couch. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, somebody just walked past the table. And she's like, what? I said, I heard somebody come down the steps and I saw somebody walk past the table. And I said, I swear to God, it was you. It looked just like you. It moved like you. You looked in, I saw your face. And she goes, I've been here the whole time. So that was really creepy. And another night we were lying, watching TV and stuff. And we were watching another paranormal show. And as we're watching, the things were starting to intensify, and the one dog was going crazy, and she never barked at anything. And she just did this weird, freaky howl, and she wouldn't stop until the show was over. And that was odd to me too. And then one night we were, and I'm a very paranoid person. No matter where I live, I lock my doors up like it's like a military base. Like it's locked down. And I never forget. And the one night I always lock the deadbolt and the door lock. And the one night, again, I had my broken ankle and everything. So maybe it was because maybe I didn't do it, but I swear I know I was waddling around in the kitchen, and I know I locked the door. I go back in, I lay down and everything, and we're watching TV and we fall asleep. We wake up like 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and it's freezing cold in the house. I mean, to the point where we're literally lying there and we could see our breath. That's how cold it was. And I get up, I'm hobbling on my crutches, and I'm, tapping the thermostat and everything. I'm like, what the hell? It's saying that it's, it's warm in here. I'm like, it's not registering. I'm like, but I can see my breath. And Leslie ran downstairs to check the oil tanks and make sure maybe did we run out of oil. Well, here we're going around, and I didn't even think to check the door because it was so cold. But here I hobbled over, and I said to Leslie, I said, you come here. And she walks over, and the front door is wide open and the porch light's on. But neither dog, we had 2 dogs at the time, neither dog reacted to anything, and they always reacted. At least Tamber did. Chopper, not so much. But it was so weird. So we closed the door, locked it up, turned the heat up a little bit more just to warm the house, and that was very weird. And then another time in 2009, my grandfather had passed away. And he was a coal miner all his life and everything. And by working down in the mines, he developed black lung. So he had a hard time breathing and everything. And when he died, he had pneumonia and complications from the black lung. And my brothers and I had gone up to the hospital to say goodbye to him. And when we were up there, I mean, it was very sad. Like he didn't know who we were. I don't need to get into it, but while we were there, he would cough and he would make like this wincing and like a pained sound. And it was often, like throughout the whole time we were there trying to talk to him and everything, he did it multiple times. So I go home, I talked to my wife and everything, and I was upset. He was a great man. And so we go to bed and we're upstairs in our room. Excuse me. And we're lying in bed, and 6 o'clock in the morning, we hear this noise. And it's that we both literally simultaneously sit up in the bed, and we look at each other, we go, what the hell was that? And I said to her, I said, this is weird. I said, that sounded like my grandfather. And we were both just kind of sitting there talking and stuff like that. And then maybe an hour or two later, I got a call from my dad, and he said, Pap passed away at 6 o'clock this morning. And that's when we heard the noise and woke up.
Yeah, which is a common phenomena with family members passing. A lot of people do report seeing them, around the time that they pass, miles and miles away from home and stuff like that. They'll say they had a dream about them, or, they'll say they woke up and saw them standing at the edge of their bed or something like that. So, that is a common phenomena with people passing, to hear or see them. So, that would be kind of weird, creepy in a way to wake up to that.
Yeah, it was just weird because, like I said, it was out of the blue and it was distinct. Like I knew that sound because we heard it so many times the night before. With
the door being open, could that have been Chopper just trying to finally cross over?
No.
Was that before he was ready to go?
Oh, that was way before. Yeah, he was still fairly young at that time. Yeah, no, that was definitely. And he was never one that would jump up at the door handle or anything like that. Now, Tamber, she was smart and she actually knew how to open doors, but we crate the dogs at night, so they weren't out walking around. So, and they were both in their crates.
I was just making a joke about Chopper, going to the light.
No, that wasn't for a while later. So then after that happened, things were kind of quiet, but there was another thing that we always noticed too, is every now and we smoked off and on, in our early relationships. Hey, Bob, thanks for joining in. But I guess right before my daughter was born is when I quit because I didn't want to be smoking around my kids. But we never smoked in the house. We'd always go outside. We had an ashtray. We put our cigarettes out and, outside. And never did we notice any smell coming in. And after we quit, we didn't keep the butts or anything like that. And we emptied it out. We put the ashtray away. But every now and again, we would smell what smelled almost like pipe smoke or cigarette smoke. Like it was just like a tobacco-y smell. And it wasn't so much cigarette. It was a little sweeter, which made me kind of think of like a pipe, but it was a tobacco. And we just we'd be in the house randomly and it didn't matter where. I noticed it one time I was upstairs, I was putting laundry away and I just turned and I caught this strong whiff of like tobacco. And I'm like, what the hell? I think that's very strange. I didn't have any cigars or I didn't have any of my pipe tobacco at the time either, because I used to smoke pipes too. But then the one day Leslie was saying to me, she's like, I was doing laundry and the laundry room was off the side of the living room. And she's like, I swear I smelled like pipe tobacco or tobacco or something. I said, yeah, I smelled it too when I was upstairs. So we noticed that off and on, actually up until right before we moved, we actually noticed that. So that was kind of a reoccurring thing throughout the whole time. Now, moving forward a few more years, that was last major thing that we were noticing was around like 2009, 2010. So then in 2011, our oldest daughter was born. And when we were bringing her home and stuff like that, if we would go out visiting family or whatever, we'd come home. Sometimes it would be late at night. And in the front yard, there was a big, and I don't know if you can see it in that picture that I had. The leaves are off it, so you can't really see it. But there was a big chestnut tree in the yard right off of from the driveway, and it was maybe about 50 feet from the driveway. So we would get out of the car, and we would hear this noise coming from the chestnut tree. And it was unlike any noise that I had ever heard before. And the closest thing that I could compare this to was I mentioned this to Tom Seawood when we interviewed him during the Tom Seawood show. He called it a whistle chirp, and he recreated that sound where it was like that. Like it almost sounded like a reverse whistle, I can't really replicate it. I mean, it sounded sort of similar to an eagle, but not. You know, it was very weird. And when I actually heard him do that for the first time on some video he was on YouTube, and then when we had him on the show, he replicated it, and it was just this reverse. I can't do it. I can't replicate it like he did, but it was coming from that tree, and it was so loud. I mean, it was ear-piercingly loud. We heard that on 3 different occasions, probably within a span of 3 months. So maybe like once a month we heard it for a 3-month span. And it was always around midnight. We would come out, from the cars, we're getting ready to go in, and then we would just hear this like this weird noise. And what was always creepy about it too is our porch light was like an old 70s. It had like that yellowy amber shade to it. So
yeah, I remember that.
I remember. And would only cast like light so far past the porch, so you couldn't see down that far. Now we had a big spotlight and everything, but you couldn't turn it on until you were in the house. But when you're coming home and you hear this noise coming out of the darkness down there, Jesus Christ, it was frightening. And I went online. I started scouring like migrating birds, like different kind of other kind of animals that I could possibly relate this to. Like I thought maybe it was like a rabbit being attacked, like how rabbits do that really weird scream, but it was different. Mm-hmm. And until I heard Tom do that, like that was the only thing that I could attest this to. Now he says it's Bigfoot, but then again, up where he's from, there's a lot of eagle that fight over the salmon and stuff like that, because there's a lot of salmon fishing going on up there. So is it eagles fighting? And I don't know. Like he's there. I can't say anything because I'm not there with him. I'm not listening to it and I'm not seeing it. So I'll take his word for it.
Can we reset the table here for a second?
Sure.
And correct me if I'm mistaken. Didn't the previous tenant before you guys moved in there, didn't he have some kind of episode where he smashed out windows and there was something going on with him?
Without getting into too much detail, there was a married couple. I don't know what happened. It's not my business. But yes, the man had a psychotic episode.
Yeah.
And it's stuck with him. I mean, he has not been cured of it. But yeah, he kind of went off the deep end and smashed the windows and trashed the house and whatnot. And we had a lot of interesting encounters with him throughout the years, but that's about all I'll say about that. But yes, that's true. I
kind of, that popped in my head as you were talking about the tree and stuff like that. And I do remember kind of conversation about the previous, tenant that had lived there and having some issues and stuff like that. So not that really has anything to do with it, except for as the further you go in on, some of the topics that we're going to be talking about tonight, I may be able to draw a little correlation to some other stuff that, in the paranormal fields and stuff like that, using that as a another reference point. So yeah, I just wanted to reset the table with that because it popped in my head, and I didn't want to be pulling up points later and people go, what is he talking about? Where did that come from? So sorry about that. Just
no, that's fine. That's good that you interjected with that, because I have something to go along with that as well. And Cleo says, I always hear one short whistle, usually when I first walk out, and I get a 3-tone whistle that sounds like it's meant as I see you. That's so funny that you say that, Cleo, because that's kind of how I took it. It was almost like something saying, maybe not I see you, but like, hey, I'm here and I know you were there. So yeah, I thought that too. I thought that was kind of weird how and again, it was almost always at the same time. And again, around that same time is when I had another encounter, which I'll get to in a little bit. But let's see, where was I at? I don't want to lose track here. Okay, so we started hearing that noise. And like I said, it was 3 times, give or take, within a 3-month span. So then as time goes on, our daughter was sleeping. She had her own room across the hall from ours. And we had just those like Graco baby monitors, and one was in her room, one was in our room. And one night we're lying there, and I know I've said this story before, but it's all part of this property. So one night we're lying in bed, and it was probably around 3:00 in the morning, again, ironically around the witching hour. And we're lying in bed. The monitor is just that kind of soft white noise, and it puts me to sleep, But all of a sudden, like you heard the white noise, it was like a shh. Then all of a sudden, it was like shh. And then it went completely blank, no white noise at all. And all I heard was this noise that I could only compare it to the movie Signs with Mel Gibson, when the aliens were doing like that. I don't know. Were you able to hear that?
It was low, but yeah.
Yeah, it was like that clicky kind of almost like insect kind of. I can't replicate it loud, but it was just this weird freaking noise. And what was even more interesting about it, it almost sounded like there was more than one thing, and they were talking. And every now and again, I could hear my daughter whimper amongst these things. And like, I'm sitting here listening to it. It probably might've been, I don't know, maybe 10 seconds, but it felt like an eternity because I'm lying there basically frozen. And then finally something in my head just snapped because I'm trying to make sense of this. And something's like, your baby, go get your baby. And I jumped out of bed, and because Leslie's freaked out, I go running into her room, and she's in her crib, fast asleep, not making. She just looked like the picture perfect little Gerber baby lying there sleeping, nothing. And I'm like, what the hell? So I go back in the room and I lay down, and it's back to the white noise. Maybe an hour or two later, heard it again, and we had heard that 2 more times after that. I don't know how many days apart, but we heard it 2 more times after that. And then finally I said to Leslie, I said, that's it. She's staying with us. She's not sleeping in that room anymore. And I brought her into the room, and she stayed with us ever since. I mean, now in the new house, she has her own bed and her own bedroom, and she and her sister share a room, actually, because they don't want their own rooms for whatever reason. So we have a spare room, but, excuse me. Anyway, back then, she stayed with us in bed with us the whole time. I didn't feel comfortable putting her back in there, and so to me, that wasn't really, I mean, obviously that's not Bigfoot. I'm getting there. So please bear with me. I don't mean to, bore anybody. But it was very strange how that happened. What does Bob say here? When I first got my farm about 5 years ago, I used to get wood knocks at night when I'd get up to pee or smoke, mostly during the middle of the night. One time there were 3 different places. It was wilder here and now I don't smoke or get up at night. That I have wood knock stories too there, Bob. So that's interesting. And then you're on a farm too. So it must be the abundance of food on the neighboring properties or your property if you actually cultivated it or farmed it. But that's interesting. So we had that odd kind of, which I would kind of attribute to not paranormal or Bigfoot, but more, it seemed more extraterrestrial to me, like an interference of a signal, and the noise, the sound. Cause I mean, like we do a lot of paranormal investigating, and we've, used devices that created white noise and stuff like that. And never once have I ever heard anything like that. It would always be like a voice or something a little bit more identifiable. This was alien, for lack of better terms. It was very different. So that kind of freaked me out, but I didn't think much of it. I was like, all right, okay, it was a weird noise, it was a weird thing. All right, the kid's in with us, everything's fine. So later on, I want to say this would be first track I found alongside the road was September of 2010. I had a Kelty backpack that I would put my daughter in, and we would go walking around the back roads around the farm. And the one day I was walking along with her, and I came upon this little dirt patch on the side of the road, and I caught something out of the corner of my eye, and it looked like a track. So I will bring that up now. So that's my shoe. I wear a size 12 sneaker, a size 13. That's a size 12 sneaker, and I found this print, and it was very weird. The toes looked off to me. It didn't look like a bear print to me. I did actually send this picture to Jeff Meldrum, Dr. Meldrum at Idaho State University, and he said it has all the hallmarks of a bear. So I'll take his word for it. And that's what I just chalked it up as. I'm like, all right, okay, cool. It's a bear. But when you see it in person, it looked very weird. It almost looked like it was missing some toes. It was just odd. So that kind of started, getting me thinking, maybe we got something around here. I mean, it is pretty, rural and whatnot. So you never know. Maybe there's something going on here. But again, like I said, I sent it to Jeff. He said it's a bear. That was it. Fine. Done. Well, as time had gone on, the one time, let me scroll through the notes, make sure I'm on track here. Okay. So after that one, it was probably in about 2012. Because my daughter was born in 2011. Oh, wait, yeah. So that first track was in 2011 because my daughter was born. She was with me. So it wasn't in 2010. It was 2011, 2012-ish, somewhere around there. So then, it was actually November 24th of 2012. It was my birthday, and I was bored, and I wanted to go out and do something. So we were planning on going over to my wife's parents' house, and I said, you know what, just let me go out my four-wheeler. I just want to rip around a little bit and kind of scout the property and whatnot. I just want to go out. So she said, all right, fine, go ahead. Go check it, go check out the trails and stuff like that. And then come back, and we're going to go to my mom's. I said, all right, fine, whatever. So I went out in the quad, and I'm cruising around, and I'm riding the trails that I always ride. And I go back this one trail, and this was right around the time of that Hurricane Katrina or whatever, or Sandy, I think. I don't know. But it knocked a lot of trees down back in the woods, and this big tree had blown down and went over the trail that I always take. And there wasn't enough room. I have a Polaris Sportsman 700X2, and if anybody's familiar with that, it's like 50 inches wide almost. So it's a big-ass machine. And I couldn't wedge it between the trees to get back on the track that I normally ride on. So I looked off to the side, and I was like, all right, well, there's another trail. I'll just cruise up here and see if it merges with my usual trail. So I go up, and I get to a certain point where the trail just kind of like fizzles off. It didn't really go much further. You could see that it just went in the forest. And I'm like, well, it's cold. It was really cold that day, actually, and it was starting to flurry. And I knew I had to run, and I'm very meticulous with my equipment. Like every time I ride, I take it home, I wash it. I never put my quad away dirty because I don't want it rusting out. And I came up, there's this big mud puddle and everything. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I don't feel like it's too freaking cold to clean this thing. I'll just turn around. But I'm like, well, I'll just scout around the mud puddle and see what I find, because I like to see what kind of tracks are around, not just for, Bigfoot, but just what kind of animals are around. I'm curious. So I get off the quad and I walk up to the mud puddle and I look down and I see this track. And as I'm looking at it, the water is actually pooling back into the impression. You could clearly see a heel. And as it goes forward, you can see the big toe and part of, I guess, what you would call the index toe. And the other toes aren't very distinct because it kind of went up on a little root. But I'm looking at this thing, and like I said, it's pooling back in with water. And I'm like, and it's a left footprint if you go by the way the toe pattern is. And I'm like, this is brand new. Like, this was just made. So I'm kind of like freaking out because it's big. And I'm like, well, is it an overstep of a bear? There were no other tracks around. It's like it stepped with its left foot by the puddle and leaped over onto the other hard surface on the other side of the puddle and must have taken off. And I have a picture of that track here really quick I'll bring up. So this is the track that I had found. And you could, well, I wish I could get my mouse to work. On the right side of the picture is where the heel had gone in. And then you can see almost in the center where I guess what you would call the mid-tarsal break, where the leaves are kind of bunched up, and then up in the front is where the toes went down. And you can see where like the ball of the feet actually pushed the leaves backwards to bunch them up in the middle like that. And I want to say it was just about 15 inches long. I'm trying to look at the ruler. And then I have another picture here I'll bring up. Oop, that's the same one. Sorry. Where the hell is that other picture? Here we go. And then it's just about 7.5 inches wide at its widest point. So it's a pretty big track. So I get all freaked out and everything. And I call my wife up and I'm like, oh my God, I think I just found a Bigfoot track. I'm freaking out and I'm telling her everything that's going on. And she's like, all right, okay, great. I'm like, no, I'm serious. I think this might be a Bigfoot track. I was like, I'm not kidding. I was like, I'm going to come home. I'm going to grab my plaster and everything. I said, I want to cast it. She's like, no, we got to go to my mom's. Come back, park the quad. We got to go to my mom's. She's expecting us. I'm like, it's a Bigfoot track. She's like, but I told my mom we're going to be there for 1 o'clock. We got to go. I'm like, are you kidding me? And, I can't argue with the wife. So I actually went down first thing the next day and I casted it. And here's a kind of a picture of what the trail looked like. The white thing there kind of towards the center bottom of the picture is the cast after I put the footprint after I put the plaster in. In front of it is what was left of the mud puddle. And then you can see where it took that one step, like hopped over the puddle, stepped on the other side where those cluster of 3 trees are, and just took off. I'm 310 pounds, and I was hopping around on that, and I didn't really sink the mud in when I was on the opposite sides. So obviously, if this were a Bigfoot, it'd be a lot heavier than me. So if I couldn't make a mark in it, I mean, I didn't expect to see any other tracks. So, and I have more pictures of this, but I just wanted to pick the most important ones, I guess. But I still have that cast actually. So that was the first, really, I guess, more solid piece of evidence that I found on the property that really made me start to think that, all right, well, maybe there could be something here. I found that one track alongside the road. That was very interesting. But, Meldrum had said, oh, it has the hallmarks of a bear. I'm like, all right, so he's the professional. So I left it at that. Then I find this one, and it starts to kind of heighten my interest on looking into things more. Because I mean, we've always been into this since the 90s and everything, and we've gone all over the place. And I'm like, well, here I live on this prime location. I want to start scouting around. And what was kind of weird is after that happened, and I don't know if it's just because, I found it and I started thinking about it, and my mind started to play tricks on me. I don't know. But after I had found the track, I kind of felt like I was being watched. I started hearing things snapping, like twig snapping and stuff like that. So I'm like, you know, is there something around me? But I really was chalking it up more as, okay, I'm psyching myself out. So it's my mind playing tricks on me. But it did feel really weird. And again, like I said, it was windy, it was cold. It very well could have been wind snapping branches and stuff like that. I'm not saying it was anything, but I just felt like I was being watched, because here I am, I find this fresh track. And obviously, if whatever made it, you know, couldn't have gotten too far without me seeing or hearing it. So it probably hopped over, hid quick, and was watching me from, you know, a short distance. And that's why I had that kind of sensation of something being there. But like I said, I then hopped on the quad and I took off. And then the next day, actually, Leslie came down with me, and she actually mixed the plaster and everything and put it together. And you can see that those little videos on our website and on our YouTube page. We have them all up there. And also, Chad and I have a sister page, a sister group, if you will, that's pretty much focused entirely on the experiences I had on that property, and some surrounding areas. But it's called the Sasquatch ATV Research Team. And here, I think I have a link for it. I posted in the comments there for anybody who wants to go check it out. That's our sister page. I mean, it's basically the same team. It's just a different title. I don't know. It's just more specific to that property. And I'm still allowed to go back. We are still allowed to go back to that property. So that we use that place as our more or less ongoing investigation, where we try and, you know, find some stuff and whatnot. And as we go on into the show, I'm gonna fill you in with some more. Like, the property's just effed up. I'm telling you, like, there's just so much weird shit that happened there. It's ridiculous. But there's a bunch of stuff on there too, like more pictures of the tracks and other things that we found down there. So feel free to go check that out. Let's see. So that was the first track. So then that was in November. Then later on in December, still in 2012. We were in the kitchen, and my wife and I we're having coffee in the morning and stuff. We're talking and whatnot. With what? What are you smiling about?
I was scratching. I'm sorry.
Oh! I thought you were laughing. I was like, "Is it my hands again?" Because I'm talking with my hands.
Well, but, you do that a lot, but I noticed I do it, so I really can't say nothing.
I was just
gonna
say, watch the playback, buddy. But we're, like I said, we're sitting in the kitchen, and you could see through the one window down the property line down to the pond, the fishing pond, the first pond that you would approach when you go back into that part of the property. And on this side, like, actually, I think Leslie saw it first, and she's like, "What is that?" I'm like, "What's what?" She's like, "That thing down there." Excuse me, mac and cheese. It's coming back to attack me. I was like, "What thing?" She's like, "That white thing down there." I was like, "I don't know. It's snow." She goes, "When the hell did we have snow?" I said, "I don't know. It just looks like a little snow pile." So I always kept my binoculars at the ready in the kitchen, because like the views from the kitchen, you could see so many things. And I was like, all right, cool. So I grabbed the goggles the binoculars, and I'm looking out the window, and I'm looking down, and I'm like, holy shit. She's like, what? I said, "It's a fish." She's like, "What?" I'm like, "It's a fish." I said, "It's one of the carp." And the carp that were in the pond, they were like 48 to 56 inch long carp. I mean, they were huge. They've been there forever. And one of the great uncles of the property, super really nice guy. He used to come down all the time, and I'd go down and talk with him. He was such a nice old guy. But he used to come down, and he would bring cat food with him. And he'd sit, there were benches around the ponds, and he'd sit down there and throw cat food into the ponds. And the carp, literally, when he would go down there, or anybody really, if you would walk down there, the carp would come right to you. Their faces would be sticking out of the water. They I guess almost became domesticated to the point where when they knew somebody was coming down there, they expected food. And they would go down there, and this dude would feed the carp cat food. So I knew what they looked like. So I throw my jacket on, and I go running. I go running down there, and here it is. It's this. I want to say it was close to 53 inches. I'll bring up a picture. So when I go down there, I find this lying alongside of the pond. It's one of the carp, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, this thing has bite marks taken out of it. And you can see back by the tail, around between the tail and the lower fin, and between the front two fins, there were bite marks. And what struck me as odd is the marks looked very primate, if you will. Like if you were to take a bite out of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, you'd have that semicircular bite mark. And this fish was riddled with them. And I was like, this is very interesting. So here, I'll bring it up. This is the bite mark, one of the bite marks. If you look at it, you can see it has that semicircular bite, chew, like the depression from the teeth, pulling scale and flesh back. Very strange. It's and once I get in this wasn't the only fish. Every one of them that were pulled out had a 4.5-inch wide bite taken out of it, identical to this. But then what kind of made me think, all right, maybe it's something else, is because I flipped it over, and you'll see in this picture, I flipped it over and the whole back half of it was basically skin. So I thought, a bear, when it bites, it doesn't take a bite like we would. A bear would bite into it with its incisors, with its canines, and bite and just tear chunks of flesh and meat off of whatever it's eating. And they would hold it down with their front paws and just chomp the shit out of it. Or they would hold it with their two paws and just gnaw away on it. It wouldn't be a semicircular bite. So when I saw this side, I'm like, all right, maybe a bear, maybe a coyote. We have a lot of them around. I'm like, it's kind of, indicative of the way they would treat their food. So the way it was kind of filleted on the back end, I was like, all right, so it was most likely a bear. But I still kept thinking about those semicircular bite marks that were going on around the body. And I was like, man, this is really, really strange. So a little bit of time had passed. It's now down to, I think at this point it was February 2nd of 2013. No, I it could be very much a bear. It could very much OSSE. I don't know if I'm saying that right. It could very well be a bear, because like I said, when it flipped over on the back side, you could see where everything was torn off. But the initial bite marks were very, very strange, and you'll see what I'm talking about later. So then it was February 2nd. It was later in the evening, almost night. I would say about maybe 8 o'clock at night, or in the evening, whatever you want to call it. I'm in the kitchen, and I'm in there with me and my daughter, and I'll bring up a picture. So this is what the kitchen looks like, right? And it was messy, so please don't judge. So my daughter was sitting on the chair in the front where that cat is, and I was sitting on the chair next to it, that with my back facing the window, and I was peeling oranges for my daughter. And we're sitting there, and it was kind of a stormy night. The wind was blowing and howling and stuff like that, and you could hear the screen of the window rattling and stuff like that. And I'm sitting there, and at the time we only had one dog, and it was my English bulldog Chopper, and he was the worst guard dog you would ever find. Like, I swear to God, he was more of a speed bump for people who intruded in the house than a guard dog. Like, you would literally trip over this guy when you walked in the house. He was dumb as shit. So we're sitting there, and then all of a sudden I hear this noise coming from the window that sounded almost like something was pressing against the screen. Like, you could hear that, almost like that tension, that what is it, tensile strength or whatever, like that ding, 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 almost kind of like pushing against the screen. All of a sudden, my dog jumps up. He goes right to the window, and he's doing that real deep, I'm a tough dog kind of, kind of snarly. And he never does that. Like, this dog, like, you don't get that out of that dog. And he's right at the window. I'm like, what the hell? So I walk over, I'm looking out the window, and I don't see anything. And I come back over, and I move the dog and whatnot, try and get him calmed down. I give my daughter her oranges, and then we go into the living room, and I get her ready for bed. Well, the next day, I'm telling my wife about this, and I'm like, yeah, it was really weird. I said the dog started going crazy. It sounded like something was pushing, against the house and everything. And she's like, oh, that's odd. So no sooner do I get done talking to her about it, we're in the kitchen having coffee as usual. And hold on. Sorry, I'm trying to go through my notes and making sure I'm not missing anything. So we look out, and sure enough, there's another carp. And I'm like, you've got to be freaking kidding me. And she's like, what? I was like, another carp. There's another fish down there. So I throw my coat on, I get my, myself together, and I go running down there. And yet again, let me get the picture of this one now. And when I got down there, the thing was frozen stiff. So I go down, and there it was again, another carp. This one was high 40s, maybe low 50 inches, because the tail fins were chewed off. Because after the initial kill, if you will, you could see it was kind of being gnawed on by raccoons around the mouth of the fish, because you could see little teeth marks. But the thing was, I'm not kidding, the thing was frozen solid. So this fish had one singular bite taken out of the lower belly area where the roe sacks would be kept, like the egg sacks. So obviously something is going after the high protein, high calorie areas, because large predators during cold seasons aren't going to expend the energy of eating an entire carcass, because they burn more calories, actually, believe it or not, than they do by just eating the important areas. So something new enough to take a bite out of the fish in this, certain area where it got the egg proteins. So it took one bite out of it and left it. If it were a bear or coyotes or even a raccoon or something, that thing would have been devoured. So that is that picture. And I have a close-up this time of the bite. As you can see, look at the center of that bite mark. And again, this is a 4.5-inch wide bite. Even if it were a bear, it would be a little bit more narrow than that, because they have that narrow snout. This is a semicircular bite. You can see in the top where the flesh is kind of peeled back, where it almost looks like two, I don't know what you call it, the two front teeth in a primate mouth. Is that the incisor or whatever? The two front teeth. You can see where it kind of goes in there, and like along the edges is almost like a molar ridge, where something just big just picked it up and took a big ass chomp out of it and threw it down to the ground and went on its merry way. And I think I have another picture of that too here. Oh yeah, here. Sorry, this program has everything so scattered. It's hard to kind of get everything fluid. So here's another bite from a different angle, and you can see where it kind of goes up into the fish's body cavity, where it was almost looked like it just kind of sucked everything out. Because I messed around with I didn't physically touch it. I just moved it around with a stick because I didn't want to contaminate it. But the cavity was empty. There was nothing in there. So it almost looked like it took a bite and kind of sucked the insides out. I don't know. Sounds weird, but it was empty. There was nothing in there. Or maybe a smaller animal got in there and ate it. I don't know. But my landlord actually had that fish. And apparently he found others too that I wasn't aware of. And he had them sent out to the fishing game, and they came back and they said that they died from old age. And we're like, but these bites, and they're like, the fish died of old age. That's what they told them.
How does a fish die of old age when it is clearly missing a chunk of itself?
I have no idea. I have no idea. And there's a question there. There are no reported sites of pumas, but people I know have found some tracks fairly close. Well, I want to say a few miles from where I was living at the time, but pumas have a huge territorial radius. So it's possible, but there's not a lot of reported pumas around there, no. But it's definitely a good thought, because I thought about that too. And go ahead.
Just to give people an idea, how high was that window in the kitchen off the ground?
Well, that's you. I swear you read my mind. So I have a picture. Okay, let me bring it up. This is the view looking out of the window from the kitchen. So that tree directly outside the window is a pear tree. And if you look way back, you can kind of see like the light areas through the trees. That's the fishing pond. And then there's a pavilion behind that. And then behind the pavilion is the fresh spring pond. And then way off to the right is the larger swimming pond. But that where the tree is, there's a hill. It actually rolls down maybe 50 feet down into like a little glen area and then raises up again on the other side back to where the ponds are. But that's looking out that window. And then in the back, oops, let me get this out of here. So take this one out, put this one up. That's me. I'm 6'3". I cannot see into the window. Now I could obviously stand and reach it, but whatever was pushing on that window had to have been taller than me, or at least as tall as me, because it's fairly high from, the ground to the window. So, I mean, bear, maybe, yeah, possible, but they should be hibernating at that time. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, but whatever it was, you could clearly hear it pushing against the screen and pushing pressure against the screen. And I don't know, whatever, it was very weird. It made my dog react, and nothing makes that dog react. But actually, I'll go a little bit more into it once I start talking about another thing that had happened. And yes, you're right. A puma bite does look like that, but even still with pumas, they'll lick it clean. They'll lick the fur or scales or skin or anything down as far as they can, because they're very dainty eaters. And they too will bite in with the canines and pull, not creating such a precise bite like that. Because I looked that up as well. Like I looked up, bites from different animals that I thought could possibly be in my area, and bear, puma do more of a sideways gnawing on a lot of the stuff that they eat, not so much of a bite like we would bite. And like the initial bite, I guess, to bite and tear, maybe could create a bite that looks like that. But everything that I looked up about puma bites, it didn't really match to what this is. But if you could find a puma bite pattern that looks like that, I would greatly appreciate it, because that could maybe write off this as something natural and not something unknown. So that's one of our big things too, is I don't ever want to jump and say it's a Bigfoot. I'm not saying these are Bigfoot bites or these encounters are from a Bigfoot. All I'm saying is they were really, really weird, and I don't know what did it. So if you have the answer, that would be fantastic, and I would greatly appreciate it sincerely.
And I so wish I could do Jaws jokes right now, but all these bite radius comments. But with like a puma, with the bite radius, would that be in a legitimate size?
I would say so. I mean, it's 4.5 inches wide. I mean, they've got more of a shorter, broader, like the cat muzzle is different from a bear, where a bear is more protruded.
Mm-hmm.
Cats are almost more brachycephalic, where it's more of a pushed in, wider mouth. So I would say it's possible. Yeah, because I mean, pumas could get pretty damn big. So I would say it's possible. But I like I said, everything that I looked up, I couldn't find, like, every puma kill that I saw looked nothing like this. They were decimated, torn apart, gnawed on, just shredded, because like I said, they bite and they tear and they do that sideways gnawing on it to chew through bone and thick flesh and meat. But like I said, this was one single bite that was just chomp gone. I don't know. It was very weird.
Yeah.
So let's see. Got through the carp. So one of the things that I thought was possible, and like I said, these carp have gotten accustomed to people. They've accustomed to people going down and feeding them. Oh, excuse me. And they know the humanoid shape, if you will. Yeah, it doesn't look like any kind of animal bite that I could recognize, Cleo. I don't know. But like I said, if somebody could provide me a picture to put my mind at ease, because I don't want to say it was a Bigfoot. I don't want to say it. I want to say it was something else. But I'm just saying I don't know at this point what it is. But anyway, so the fish have become habituated, if you will, or trained that when a person approaches, they're going to get fed. During the winter months, not many people go down there. The fish are probably a little bit more hungry. So what if a humanoid shape approached the pond? The fish took it as, oh, we're going to be fed. I'm going to go to it. Because, I mean, I'm not kidding. They eat from your hand. Like, my kids and I have gone down there and literally knelt down next to the pond and poured, like, put our hands, there's my hands over there. There we go. Put my hand out and dumped food into the fish's mouth. One of them actually touched my fingertip. Like, they're not afraid of you. They come right to you. So let's just say, hypothetically, this was a Bigfoot. Very similar to a person's physical structure. This creature goes up to the pond, kneels down, just like I do. And the fish come up. They're a little bit slower. It's colder. They're not, moving around as quickly as on a hot day. And, the Bigfoot, maybe he saw how that worked. And maybe they're luring him in with something that they had found, and the fish are coming over and all of a sudden, whoop, snatch it up. Because I'm sure they're adapted to catching game better than we are. Please do some research and send me it, please. I would totally appreciate that. Because like I said, I looked, I couldn't find anything, but I please. So yeah, maybe whatever it was, lured the fish in and yanked it out, took a bite and went on its merry way. Easy as that. So that's a possibility. I don't know. And anybody who could lend any kind of better, stronger information, more scientific, factual, actual matter of a factual, please, I am open to it. Because like I said, I'd rather find out a plausible answer than say that it is a Bigfoot. Because I won't say that it's Bigfoot until I physically see it. So with all that happening, I left the fish carcass down there. Then, like I said, my landlord ended up coming and snatching it. But I also started baiting more, and I figured, all right, well, if this thing is coming after, at that point too, the fish was gone. No. The first time we put the camera trap down, the fish was there. We got a bunch of raccoons and a crow. Then I went back down. The fish carcass was gone, which I assume was my landlord who took it. So I went down to the grocery store and I bought a bunch of salmon eggs that you would fish with. Because I thought, all right, well, if this thing is going after the roe, I'm going to try and lure it in with something that it obviously has already gone after. So I got some fish and some salmon eggs and whatever else I could find. And at that point, the pond was frozen solid. So I just basically put it out far enough where if something came for my bait, I'm going to see it. So I set the trap up and everything, and I put the eggs down and whatnot. And as it always goes, I got lots of coons, lots of crows, but no Bigfoot. A lot of blank pictures that I didn't know why they were blank, but the things that did come through were, like I said, raccoons, crows, a cat, and that was it. But when my wife and I had gone down there to get the memory card out of the camera, we were just kind of messing around. There was snow that had just fallen. So we're down there, we're putzing around, and I said to her, I said, well, let's do a couple whoops, because at that time, that's when Finding Bigfoot was coming in, and we used to laugh, with the whooping and whatnot. And I said, all right, well, for shits and giggles, let's whoop it up, So we were doing a couple whoops and whatnot, and when the barn is about maybe 75 yards from where we were standing. Something grabbed a softball-sized rock and chucked it against the side of the barn. We both look at each other. We're like, what in the world was that? So we go hightailing down to the barn. You could see where the rock was covered in snow, so it left like a little bit of a snow debris on the side of the barn. You can see where it hit. You can see where it hit the ground and rolled, and we found the rock. And I'm telling you, this thing was like a softball-sized rock. And I'm looking around trying to see who or what threw this. There were no other tracks other than our own coming down towards the barn. And I actually went back into the wooded area to try and see if I could find some tracks. And I couldn't find anything. And it turns into a swamp further beyond that. And like I said, it was snowing. It was bitter cold. I wasn't going into the swamp. So it could have been thrown from the swamp. I don't know. But it was very weird how we're down there kind of taunting, and we had that happen. And let's see what happened after that. All right, so that was okay. So then after the winter, we're coming into spring and summer, and my daughter, I want to say around that time, she was like, I don't know, maybe 18 months old, maybe a little bit older. I don't know, but she was able to walk, and we're outside and we're playing in the driveway. And what I noticed is when my daughter was outside and laughing and talking and whatnot, the activity seemed to pick up. And at that time, I had contacted another researcher named Melissa Hovey, and she had brought up a bunch of good points that male Bigfoot supposedly are attracted to the sound of human children, and they're very inquisitive, and also that males have migratory routes or areas that they kind of fluctuate between. And so she gave me a lot of great advice, and we were outside in the driveway playing and stuff, and my wife had yelled out, she said, all right guys, dinner's ready, come on in, let's go. And I said, all right baby, let's go, it's time to go in. And of course, like children always do, she put up a fight, and she was screaming and yelling and being defiant. So I had to get stern, and I yelled at her. I said, no, we're going in now, enough is enough, So I got, stern, and she started crying. And while we were out there, there was no hard wind. I mean, a zephyr at best. There was no wind. And when she started crying, I picked her up, I started carrying her in, and a freaking tree fell down behind the barn. And my wife comes running out, and she's like, what was that? I said, a tree fell down. She's like, what? I was like, a tree fell down behind the barn. She's like, how the hell did a tree fall down? I said, I don't know. Maybe it was loose. Maybe it was leaning against something. Maybe, I don't know. But it was just kind of weird how I'm outside playing with my kid. The minute she gets upset and I have to take her away, a tree falls down. Is it, a Bigfoot possibly, showing aggressive tendencies, like because he didn't want her to go in? I don't know. Very strange. Coincidental. So that happened. And then I had cleared off, there was a dog run behind the house on a little concrete pad, and I have a picture of it. I'll show you guys. So this is the little dog run thing. I cleared it off. I cleared some of the bushes around behind it, put some tiki lights up and stuff like that. And like we had that little chimney. So we'd go out, we'd have, little fires and stuff like that. And, it was me, my wife, the dog, and Lily, our daughter, and we'd roast marshmallows and stuff. And we were out there It was dark. I don't know exactly what time, maybe 9-10 o'clock. I don't know. It was dark. And we're out there having a good time, and you know, we're laughing and talking and roasting marshmallows, and back behind the bushes, it drops down. Like I said, it drops about 50 feet. It goes down into a creek. And we're sitting out there and we hear something splashing through the creek. Now we get a lot of deer that pass through the area. So we're like, oh, it's the deer coming up. They're coming up to the field. So we're sitting there, and all of a sudden the dog gets up. And like I said, this dog doesn't react to anything. He reacted to the thing on the screen. And now we're sitting outside. And I think, honestly, I think the dog was half deaf, to be honest with you, because he didn't hear half the stuff you said to him 90% of the time. But we're sitting there, and he was lying on his belly facing the forest, the woods, and the back part of the pad there. Well, we hear this thing moving around. All of a sudden, Chop gets up. The hair on his back is starting to stand, and he's doing that deep growl, you know, giving out a couple of, you know, a couple little almost like warning barks, you know, and all of a sudden, whatever was down there started coming up the hill at us, and at a fairly fast rate. And I said to Leslie, I said, "Oh, it's probably one of the deer coming up," and I said, "I'll yell at it." You know, and I have a fairly loud voice, and out there when you would yell into the forest, like it echoed, like you could hear everything down there. Like the echo was ridiculous. So I get up and I'm like, "Hey!" I yell down at it. It starts coming up even faster. And I said to Leslie, I said, get the baby. And she's like, what? I'm like, it's coming. Whatever it is, it's coming, you know? And, I was like, get in the house. Cause I said, whatever it is, it's coming up. And I didn't know what it was. It was loud. It sounded big. So I thought, oh shit, you know, is it a bear? You know what I mean? Because at that time it's spring, you know, could have been a sow with some cubs, not something I wanted to mess with. So she starts going back up with the baby to the house, and I, you know, grab some of the stuff that's laying around, and I'm trying to get the dog to come with me, and you know, he's not reacting. So I take the stuff up to the porch, and I come back down to get my dog and to put the fire out, and I'm getting yelled at because, well, don't go out there, you don't know what it is. I'm like, well, I can't leave the fire going. I can't leave my dog out there, you know? So I go back over, and I can hear something moving around, and I started yelling. I was like, hey, get out of here. Go on. You know, I'm yelling and stuff. Then all of a sudden, like it was further away a little bit. And then all of a sudden you could hear it kind of backtracked and started coming right at us. I actually grabbed my dog, and I'm like, let's go. We got the hell out of there. So we went back up in the house, and that was kind of weird. And then there were a few other instances after that where, and again, it always seems to be something happening when I'm out there with my daughter, and I don't know why. We were outside just walking around, and we were back by that pear tree that I had showed you guys outside of the window. And we're sitting there, and all of a sudden I hear in the distance like a ch, ch, ch. And we're listening. And I was like, hey, I said, you hear that? And, she, you know, my daughter's just smiling, looking at me and stuff. And I'm like, listen. And we hear, ch, ch, ch. Now, we didn't have neighbors that were right on top of us. And the neighbor that would be behind us was probably about a mile behind us, give or take. And I'm like, well, maybe they're building something. Are they hammering on something? Is somebody, you know, I don't know. I don't know what it was. So I'm sitting there, and I said, all right. I said, let's play back. Let's play back, honey. You know, so I pick up a stick and I start knocking on the pear tree. 1, 2, 3. The thing responds. 1, 2, 3. We did that a couple times. Then I'm like, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then it comes back. 1, 2, 3, 4. However I changed the pattern, it replicated. Could it have been somebody messing with me? Sure it could have been. But again, it was just very weird. And from that day on, we started hearing more what I would, I guess, call a wood knock. I'm not a huge subscriber of wood knocks, but I would hear this sound in different areas of the property. And like I said, it's 150 acres. I mean, there's a lot of ground. So let's see. Those were some of the main things that we started noticing and hearing and experiencing. Uh, So, oh yeah, so the one day, this was September 10th in 2013. The one day I was out, this time I didn't take my four-wheeler, I went walking, and I found what appeared to be another track back in the woods behind the house. This was in like a little tiny creek bed, had a little bit of gravel and whatnot in it, and I came upon this track, and it was fairly definitive, defined. You couldn't really tell in the picture. That's why I outlined it, because like in person you could see it more clearly, but in the picture, for whatever reason, I don't know if it was the way the shadows were laying or whatever. I don't know. It didn't, so I outlined it, just whatever. So now you see what it looks like. But so I found that one. I was like, all right, so there's still something. And at that point, I think I've acquired 6 or 7 camera traps. I had them up all over the damn place. Chad, when you started coming out at that point, when I started bringing you out, I mean, Jesus, how many did we put up?
At some points, about 5 out of the 6.
Yeah, I'd say at least. We tried to kind of triangulate the property of where most of the activity had happened. We tried to kind of create a perimeter, so if something would pass through, we were hoping we would catch it, and unfortunately we never did. But so I found that, and then it was in March. A buddy of mine had come over. I was part of a different paranormal group at the time, one of the many that Chad and I have been bounced in and out of. He came down. We were doing some evidence review and stuff like that, and he's like, "Hey, do you want to go for a walk just around the property?" I said, "Yeah, sure. We'll go check it out." So at this point, we're coming out of winter and stuff like that. Things are kind of thawing and whatnot. And we go down, and he was asking me about some of the fish and stuff like that. He's like, "Oh, so where did you find this one?" And we're down at the small pond. We're looking at it. Then we go back up to the big pond, which actually had koi fish in it. And sure enough, in the big pond, one of the koi, there it was, one singular bite. Now this bite's taken out higher in the fish. But yeah, and that one obviously had been there for a while, because you could see it was starting to decompose. But again, that's the third fish that I had found killed in a similar fashion. One semicircular bite taken out of the body, the rest of it left. I don't know what to make of it. It's very strange. So then, after that, this is probably later. This is in the summer of 2013. This is when Chad and I started scouting out together, and this is when I took him to where I found the first track and whatnot. And I'm going to let you talk about that experience, because I've gone on and my throat's getting dry.
Okay.
And I actually have the not to cut you off, but you mentioned in the comments, I have the audio on my phone. I'm going to try and play it on the show.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so we went out. Les wanted to show me where he had found this track and everything. And so we went out, and we're out there, and he shows me the little area where he found it, and kind of explaining what was going on the day he was out there and stuff. And of course, I'm out there in flip-flops because I had a broken bone in my foot and I couldn't put on shoes. So, we're standing there. We're just like looking around and kind of, checking out the different areas and seeing if there's any, besides the trail that people ride quads and stuff on, was there any large openings, for animals to be crossing in that direction, back and forth. So we're looking for like larger game trails and stuff. And if anybody's, familiar with Pennsylvania woods, we have mountain laurel, which basically is just this weird, it tangles on top of itself and it becomes like a wall that you couldn't get through if you tried.
Yeah. And they harbor ticks.
Yeah. So we were like, standing there talking, and I look over into, down this area from where the print was found, and I'm like, hey, I want to go check out, there's like this like weird stone, kind of almost looks like a circle. It's not really a circle, but it kind of looks like it from the trail and stuff like that. So of course, I start walking down there, and Les, of course, has to remind me, hey, it had rained the day before or earlier that morning. He goes, hey, just remember, rattles don't rattle when they're wet. Of course, I know there are snakes out there. I know this. I grew up in this area. I know there's rattlesnakes and copperheads, and I don't need to be reminded, especially when I'm wearing flip-flops.
Yeah.
So I'm out there. I walk out a little ways, and I kind of get in behind some of this, in an area where there's some mountain laurel from where I could actually see less. So I kind of like squat down a little bit to yell over to him. And as I do, I look between my feet, and there is a footprint in between my feet. Now, it's not one of my feet, as you can kind of see. I think Les has it up now.
Yep.
Now that's Les's shoe in the photo. Like I said, I was wearing flip-flops. But I just look down and I see this print, and I'm like, dude, you got to come over here. Now, where this print is, at the time, I don't know how big Les was. I was about 250, and we weren't denting the ground that we were walking on. I mean, we jumped up and down, bounced on our heels to see if we left an indention or anything like that. And to me, in this footprint, or what I think is a footprint, it's not an area you'd be walking without shoes on. Like I said, I had flip-flops on, but I had a broken bone in my foot. And I wear flip-flops all the time, or sandals, so I'm kind of used to that. But I wouldn't have taken my shoes off. It's pine needles and stuff like that. I wouldn't have walked through that area barefoot. And to me, it kind of looks like there's a big toe in there and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. What size are those boots you have on, Les?
13s.
13s, and you can kind of see it. It's a pretty close, to Les's foot size in that photo.
And don't write off the possibility of a juvenile.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It may not be the 15, 16-inch tracks, like the big tracks. Could be a younger one, because what Chad and I were kind of theorizing, about the throughway, the track, you go on.
Well, no, bring that part up, because...
Well, this track was found about 75 feet from where I had found the one in the puddle where the water was pooling back in. And what we're kind of thinking is, and I have another story to go along with this particular spot. The large majority of the tracks that we found were in this area. So we're thinking that, and right around it are a lot of game trails too, deer trails. Mm-hmm. So what we were kind of thinking is maybe this is a throughway. Maybe this is an area that they travel a lot to go back and forth to wherever they're going. And do you want to talk about when we came back later with your brother and your nephews and down further in the pine trees?
Yeah, I mean, we took out my nephews, and my little brother went with us one time. We just went out hiking, and kind of, my little brother was into Bigfoot and stuff like that. So we just, went to get him out and, just take the boys out and go hiking around. My other two nephews were more into the paranormal stuff. So I used to drag them to Gettysburg all the time, and, drag them all around the battlefield and different places. So, we were out walking. And this was after Superstorm Sandy had went through. So there was a lot of, trees knocked over, uprooted trees. Mm-hmm. And when you're in a lot of this area, like I said, there's very dense sections of mountain laurel and very dense areas of pine and all that. But you kind of get into this one area, and it's kind of ringed by like mountain laurel and pines and stuff like that. And it's almost like you could, if you wanted to camp in that area and have shelter from the wind, mm-hmm. this area would be perfect. Now, in that area, we also found some dead birds, some mm-hmm. turkey and stuff like that, we found clusters of feathers, which I'm not saying that was, Bigfoot or something like that. That could have, just been other animals. But we were finding all this stuff in this very dense, this area was open with very thick, dense laurel around it. And a trail way going in and out of it big enough for Les and I to easily walk in and out through it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so there was a lot in that area, and you know, there's a lot of shelter and you know, food available, and you know, areas where you could walk within 5 or 6 feet of something and never notice it.
Nope.
You know, on the other side of those laurels or through the pines, I mean, you could walk right next to something, barely even have a hint that something's next to you. So definitely there was a lot of area and openings for something larger than a deer to get in and out through that area.
Yep. And what was kind of neat about that too is, like Chad had said, there were pine trees, but they weren't mature pine trees. They were all maybe 10 to 15 feet max. Some of them were shorter. So it was just this very small cluster of young pine. And what was kind of interesting is, I don't know if it was like maybe a little wind tunnel that had gotten created within them, because all around them were other, I guess, deciduous trees, not conifer trees. So when their leaves dropped, I don't know if they just got stuck between the pines and did a little swirl around when the wind would pick up or what. But because you remember around the edges that the leaves were piled up?
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of weird. And I mean, it almost, like Chad said, it almost kind of created the perfect bedding area. Like you had the small pine that created the shelter, and you had all this leaf litter in the inside that created like an insulated bedding, which was, I don't know, very, very unique. And come to think of it, we probably should have stepped on a lot of those piles, because maybe they were bedding, like burying themselves under. Because did you ever see some of those survival, like the people would literally bury themselves in leaves to create insulation? Maybe the Squatch were actually hidden in the leaves and we didn't even know it. But it was funny, like getting in there, like literally we would have to, like, I mean, it was thick, and there was only like one or two areas that were wide enough to walk more freely through, but it was very dense around it. Because like to get in there, we had to go through maybe 20 feet or maybe 30 feet of the compact pine. Because I remember we were walking like sideways. We like, you had to push your way through it. So it was very interesting. And like you said, there were turkey kills in there. Like there was the remains of a bunch of turkeys, some bones of something, I don't know. But it was almost like an eating place. Like obviously something, when they would kill, they would take everything back into this one locale and eat.
Yeah, it definitely had that, like, to me it kind of seemed like almost like it was the perfect amount of shelter and security to be able to kind of eat or bed down, or you know, avoid other things moving through the woods in that area.
Right.
You know, just kind of hunker down in those areas. Not saying that, you know, Bigfoot or anything like that, but just even if I was out there hiking or camping and needed somewhere to, you know, kind of take a break or something like that, it was the perfect just spot in the middle of dense woods and laurel bushes, you know, to just have that area and kind of break up the wind and stuff that would come through there.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have the picture of the uprooted tree with all of us in front of it, do you?
No, I don't. Well, you could go to the Sasquatch page. It's on there in one of the albums. And it's actually in the Explorers Seekers of the Truth cover video.
Yeah.
Where there's a picture of me and Chad had his arm up on, it's like this boulder that got stuck in the root of the tree when the tree had fallen over from the storm. And we're standing next to it. I mean, just the root ring is huge. It dwarfs us. It looks like we're actually standing against like a dirt wall, but it's the bottom of a tree with a giant boulder in it.
Yeah, that was, I think, you, my brother, and my two nephews. I think there's a picture of all of you standing in front of it, and there's still dirt, like, root past you with dirt in it and stuff like that. It was a huge tree. I mean, it was definitely over 12 foot high.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But So that was when Chad and I started doing a lot of research on the property. And this is right before, and which was so like upsetting too, because I'm getting all this activity, all this stuff is starting to happen. And of course I'm with my, you know, my not just my best friend, but my right-hand man when it comes to investigating. Then he moved to Virginia shortly after that, and all the investigating kind of ceased for a while. But we did go out the one night, and I have a call blaster, and I downloaded a lot of the supposed Bigfoot calls that are out there, like the Sierra sounds and all that shit. So we had a bunch of sounds, and Melissa Hovey actually had said to try a baby crying, a human baby crying, which we tried that as well. So we were in the area of the woods right before you get to where we found our tracks. We call it the meadow. There's like this little field kind of back in the middle of the forest, and it's all clear cut, so you could see. And we were in right when you would come off the main trail into the meadow. We kind of set up there kind of in the shadows because it was on a full moon because we wanted to be able to see. And what was it, like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning or something like that? It was pretty late.
Yeah, it was late.
Somewhere around there, yeah. And we went down there with the call blaster, and we were like, all right, let's fire off some sounds, see what we get. We didn't get much when we played the supposed sounds. But when we started playing like coyotes, the baby crying, the meadow would. How long do you think that would? You say that would be like 100 yards?
Maybe a little over 100.
Maybe 125, 150.
Yeah, probably about 150.
So about that distance from us, down in the far corner of this meadow. When we were doing the blasts, it looked like something was kind of coming in and out of the tree line, like poking itself out. Because Chad and I would come out every now and again. Like we'd do some blasts and we'd walk out of the shadows and kind of, scan the field, and we'd go back in. And we were doing that. And then there was something way down in the far end that we both kind of saw that was kind of peeping in and out every now and again, but we couldn't really find anything conclusive. Show link for what? For the other page? Here, I'll put it up again. It's in the comments. I posted the link to the other page with pictures. I have it. I'll post it again. If it's still in my, there it is.
Yeah, that time it was one of those things, like it just reminded you of somebody like playing peekaboo with you, like kind of coming, like if this is a tree, all of a sudden you just see something kind of, and it would go back behind the tree, and then it would look out a little bit, and it would go back behind the tree. Now again, this was a full moon, so you had some pretty good visibility, but at the same time, I don't think either one of us wanted to run up and find out what was behind that tree.
Oh, because I think that's the time that we went out actually unarmed. So I wasn't really going to, especially that late at night. Yeah, there was something, I don't know what it was. Could it have been a branch? Yeah, it could have been a branch, but it didn't look like it. It looked like a head and part of a shoulder kind of popping in and out, kind of doing that peekaboo. Do you want to talk about the time we went out when the snow was so ridiculously thick that we could barely make it, and we put that the fish out in that mesh bag?
Oh yeah, the great time where we trudged through 1.5 foot of snow from the house. How far out did we go? Like in distance, ideal?
Probably 2 miles.
Yeah, we trudged through and legitimately it was 1.5 foot of snow. I think there's some pictures on the Explorers page of walking and stuff like that, or us taking a break out by the swing set out by the one pond. But we had hiked out a good ways out on that trail, and we put up some trail cams and hung what were they, tilapia fillets or something like that in like a mesh fruit bag. And we hung it up. And how many weeks later did you go back?
Oh, God.
Like,
probably 2 or maybe 3.
Yeah. So we let the trail cams up and stuff like that. And that was the time we got a very, I think we actually talked about it maybe last week or.
No, that wasn't that time. That was later. That wasn't during the snow when we got that.
Oh, okay. So I'm trying to think of what I remember. A picture of a squirrel and some deer.
We had the deer that went through. We had the 2 squirrels that actually took the fish.
Yeah.
Remember? Yeah, we got that all on video. But the video we talked about with Linda, that was later. That was right before you moved.
Okay.
But on the way back from is what I'm talking about. With remember when we were going?
Oh, okay. Coming
when we were
back
going to it, and what you saw to the left. First, talk about when we were first trudging through by the big pond.
That was actually what I thought I saw was on the way back.
Oh, well, okay. You go on. I thought it was on the way in. Go ahead. You talk.
Well, we had walked out, like we said, and we were coming out through, and on the way back in, it was just like a weird kind of, because of course you're trudging through snow and stuff like that, and you just had that weird feeling. Mm-hmm. And we would stop every so often and stuff like that, and we got to a certain point on the trail, and it was just a very odd sound. And a lot of people talk about infrasound and stuff like that. It was a sound that you legitimately would feel the sound. Yeah. Yep. Like it just resonated through your body. I don't have an opinion one way or another on infrasound and stuff like that, but I felt and heard something that changed how I felt at the moment. And
it was almost, do you remember? It was almost like a lion sound.
Yeah.
It was like that. Just like a real, I'm butchering it. It was really deep. And like Chad said, you almost felt it in your chest. It was like a, like bass in like when you have like a car with like the systems in it, you know what I mean? And the bass, like that reverberation. It was really like we felt it in our chest when this sound came, and it was across the pond.
Yeah. And here's the thing. We weren't walking next to each other. Mm-mm. We were spaced out a good 15 foot from each other. Like Les was up in front of me and I was behind him a little ways. And we both just kind of started getting out towards the end of the trail, where the ponds would be. And it just happened like to hit you. And, we kind of stopped and we were trying to figure out what it was. Could it have been a car somewhere down the line, down the road somewhere, revving up or something like that. But it was just we didn't hear a car coming because it's in an area where the roads are far enough off that you wouldn't have any contamination from light or anything like that. But yeah, occasionally you can hear a car coming down the roads, but you hear them come down the road and continue on past you.
Right.
This just was that sound and nothing. So we kind of were standing there for a little bit and kind of looking around and staying quiet to see if we could hear it again, see if it was, something. We're really trying to debunk what it was. So we finally just kind of started moving again, and we moved down around the pond and started heading back towards the house. And there, it's kind of, the pond is kind of rimmed with some bushes and trees and stuff like that. So we stop, Les is looking at the one pond and I'm looking back from where we came. And there's like a little opening, maybe 2 to 3 foot off the ground, just through the bushes. And we're standing there for a little while, and I saw something cross in front of that opening. Now, thicker legs than Les and I have, and we're pretty big guys. These legs would have been thicker, and it was just a quick, like, crossed in front of this space, and it was nowhere else to look to see, like, oh, if you look a little bit further down here, you might see another glimpse of it. It was so dense and thick at that point. You just saw something cross in front of that space, and whatever it was very thick-legged, and it wasn't a bear to me. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't a deer. I know how to spot deer in the woods and stuff like that. I've hunted since I was a kid. I grew up in a family of hunters. This was upright moving legs, so bipedal walking. Mm-hmm. And it crossed over, and I'm like, dude, come here a second. And Les comes back over, and I'm like, you see that? And I actually had my laser sight with me, and I pointed out into the woods. I'm like, dude, do you see that opening right there? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, I am almost positive I just saw something walk in through that opening. And he's like, was it a deer? I'm like, no, it was walking on 2 legs. It wasn't something walking where the torso came across it. It was something walking like this. And I'm not saying it was Bigfoot. Legitimately, could it have been somebody trying to play a prank on us? Possibly, except for we don't post where we're going. We don't post that we're even going. We don't give people a heads up like, hey, we're heading out this weekend, or we're having a camp out.
It's usually we're texting back and forth. I'm like, what are you doing? I don't know, nothing, just sitting around. Are you free? Can you get out tonight? Yeah. All right, come on up. We'll go out. That's it.
Yeah.
There's no pre-planned, predetermined, or nothing.
Yeah, a lot of times we'll have one of those moments where it's like, I was thinking, about this theory, and I kind of want to go out and scout around to see if we see any of the signs that match this. What are you doing? Well, I'm sitting here. The kids will be going to bed soon. Head on out. And we would, grab the gear, hike out, middle of the night, middle of the day, if the time was right, and we would go out looking for specific signs that, we were, thinking about, like if it is a migratory animal, if it migrates through this area, it would cross through here at this type of years, this time of year. So we would be looking for, okay, if it's walking and this is where we found these tracks, it's got to be walking through these trees or past this set of laurels or through this. So we would go out looking for hair or something like that would, kind of indicate something walking in those areas. So it legitimately could be a person pulling a prank or something like that. But again, it goes back to, you would have to be in the right place at the right time,
right, for
us to see you. It's 150 acres just there, that property. It's not just 150 acres of woods. It's, miles of woods and mountain, and you would have to be really lucky for me to see you cross through that space, because there's no guarantee I was going to stop there.
Yeah.
At that point, we had heard that sound and it physically felt it. We could have just as easily kept walking and just walked back to the house, got in the house, and been like, okay, good day. And I could have hopped in my car and, drove home. And I'll tell you, a couple times when we would go out late at night and I'd go to leave, like if I left that night, if I didn't like stay over or anything like that, I would have the weirdest, like, walking to my car. And my car was only a couple, feet from the house. But I would have the weirdest, like, I would be looking around, and of course, you're out looking for something, like Bigfoot or something like that, which could possibly be just a large bear. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would
Which
always,
we had a lot of them out there.
yeah, I'd always park by that one apple tree, and I would just
Mhm.
like walk up the driveway with like a flashlight, looking around the apple tree to make sure there wasn't a set of eyes looking back at me.
Or I
And I
used to
would
turn the
jump.
spotlights on and walk out with you.
Yeah, I would jump in my car, start it up, throw on the headlights, sit there until it warmed up a little bit, and then just leave. Like take
Yeah.
off, like down the driveway, like, okay, see you later, I'm gone. Yeah. And it always had that creepy, like you're waiting to turn on your headlights and just see it standing there looking at you, whether it was a bear or a Bigfoot or whatever, or just somebody. You always just had that feeling like you're going to throw on your headlights and there's going to be something in front of your car.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always had that out there. Like, it was a nice area, great area to hike. I mean, we went out walking in that area. We took my dog out, which my dog does not move, but she went out. We drug her out there the one time and walked her through some of the woods and stuff like that. And it was fun, but during the day, it was that fun, just roam around. It's bright and sunny out, or even if you're in the wooded areas, it was still that nice peaceful thing. And then you'd start getting later in the evening, dusk and late into the night, and you'd have just some weird noises and all stuff that logically there's could be explanations for and stuff like that, but some of it was just it would just throw you off while you're out there. Like,
Yeah.
that sound we heard, I can't logically explain it except for replicating other animals. And the problem is the animal, like Les said, would be a lion, and
Yeah.
we should not have a lion in that part of Pennsylvania that is roaming the woods.
And it just like we were saying though, that just like that resonating bass. Because remember, like it both hit us in the chest, and actually we both kind of stopped and we both got dizzy, and I actually felt like I was going to throw up.
Yeah, I had the inner ear, like the your equilibrium getting like thrown off. And now I've had a lot of problems with my inner ears over the years. I had, ruptured an eardrum as a child and had tubes and stuff like that over the years.
Mm-hmm.
But it was that like threw my balance off very, like we stopped for a good while standing there. Like not
we had to compose ourselves almost.
Yeah. And it's the thing of like neither one of us are necessarily big believers in the whole infrasound thing, theory and stuff like that, but yet experiencing something like that we can't just write off to, and trying to write it off, like trying to figure out, could it have been a motor being started up, and that just the way we heard it sounded like this, but that doesn't explain the dizziness and the off feeling that our bodies were going through and the pressure that you actually felt in your chest when we heard it.
Yeah, it was odd to say the least. But and not soon after that, that's when you had moved, and things kind of died down as far as going out researching. I didn't do much on my own, and at that time I was just starting my business, and things changed. We had another kid at the time, and it was just different. But I did go out with a friend of mine who was in law enforcement, and he had a bunch of people with him too that are kind of like-minded people. And we went out, and again, very close, not as close as the track that Chad found, but very close to the trackway. We did find this, which kind of, it was interesting. It could have definitely been an overstep by a bear. But again, it was another large track found near the same area we found all the others. So take it as you will. But I documented it all the same, just because, you know, we were there, and, you know, that was that. Let's see. So that was when I went out with those guys. Oh, and this is the what Chad was saying. We recorded some audio. One night I was upstairs. I had a really small room. That was my home office at the time. I was upstairs working. It was, I want to say, around like between 12 and 1 o'clock in the morning. I was upstairs working because that's what I do. I'm always out in the middle of the freaking night. And my wife was downstairs. Both the kids had fallen asleep. They had these little fold-out bed sofa things. And the kids they would lay on them on the floor, and they'd fall asleep watching a movie or whatever. And Leslie was downstairs with the kids, and she was watching TV, and she was working on something. I don't remember what she was working on. I don't know if she was doing work or what, but anyway, she comes running upstairs, and she's in a panic. And I'm like, what's the matter? And she's like, you have to hear this. You have to hear this. And I'm like, what? And we go running into our room across the hall and open the window, and I'm listening to this noise, and I'll kind of take you through what she told me. She was downstairs and she heard coyotes, which is not uncommon. We have coyotes all over the damn place out at that farm, and we would hear them nonstop. We never really heard them very close to the house, though. She heard them as if they were right outside the door, like right in the yard. She turned the spotlight on. She was trying to look, you know, to see if she could see them, but they were right out in the yard, and they sounded different than what they normally sound. And for whatever reason, I didn't hear them, and I don't know why. I do play music fairly loud while I'm working, so maybe I just didn't hear it over the music. But she heard this sound, and she's freaking out, and she's like, "Oh, I heard the coyotes." Then they all of a sudden just stopped. Then she's like, I kept hearing this noise, and it would go over and over and over. And I know what coyotes sound like, and this was just off. By the time, and you know, the thing that sucks is I have a bionic ear in my gear box, which was in my basement, and the bionic ear was in the bottom of that box. You never have the damn thing out and ready when you need it. So when this happened, again, I was working. I wasn't investigating. I wasn't out squatching or anything, whatever you want to call it. I was working, so I wasn't anticipating anything. But she comes up and she's freaking out, and all I had was my cell phone. So I pulled out my cell phone, went to the voice memo thing to try and record, and I was able to get it. Now, keep in mind, the sound was coming from a distance, and the direction that I heard the sound coming from would put it probably right where we keep finding these tracks, because it sounded like it was that far out. I was only able to catch like 2 or 3 decent sounds, and then it had stopped. After I recorded that, she left the spotlight on, so I'm just kind of sitting there listening, and you could hear something moving in the tree line just right outside of where the light was falling. So you could hear something moving around, and I mean, after a while it just kind of stopped, and I had to go back to work because a client was waiting on a project I was working on, so I had to get it done, and plus it was late and I was getting tired. So I'm like, all right, look, nothing else is happening. Keep your ears open. If you hear anything else, let me know. She didn't hear anything after that, but I'm going to play the audio for you, and I hope it works, and I apologize if it doesn't. Bear with me. and that was it. Like I said, I'm sorry. I had to really enhance the audio because it was far away and I was using a cell phone. I'm going to try playing it again. So if you listen, you could hear like maybe 4, kind of like a woo, woo. I mean, there's a pause between each one, but it was very distant. But if you were there, it was very loud. But the cell phone didn't pick it up very well. And it was very different from the coyotes. I'm going to play it again. Ah, damn it. I'm gonna try it again because I turned the volume up on the phone. Maybe that'll help. Were you able to hear it, Chad? Like,
yeah, I could hear it.
All right, I can try it one more time. That's it. Like I said, it was just a few I caught at the end, but that was really weird. So I don't want to. We're getting pretty late into the show here, and I don't want to drag it on too long. But after that, we didn't really experience much. I did go, and here's some just to give you guys kind of an idea. There's a gentleman that lived across the way from us in the farm across the street. He's like a 3rd or 4th generation living in that property in the area. And he had told me that he, as well as other family members, had experienced what they could say could be possibly Bigfoot activity. He's had his dogs spooked when they're out walking. Something was in the creek bed and it spooked the dogs. He would always catch a glimpse of something, but not a conclusive. He was out hunting the one time and he heard something running around. And he's kind of a believer himself. I did have another person from a farm further down the way say that, they're a believer. They had stuff happen on their property that, made them think that there was a Bigfoot. Also, another farm even further down, maybe about 3 miles down the road, a girl, and ironically, her parents and her older sister used to live in the property that I was living in when they were young. But then they bought a farm down the way. She said the one time she was out with her brother, they were out playing in the snow and they were playing hide and seek, and her brother was hiding and she was looking for him. And she said she saw what, like a trackway. And she went over to follow the tracks because she thought it was her brother. And she said when she looked down, they were huge footprints that looked like a person's footprint. Kind of came out of the woods into the yard a few feet, went maybe 10 or 12 tracks, cut back into the woods and went deeper into the woods. And she said she got really upset because she thought her brother was pulling a prank on her. They were really young at the time. And she goes running into the house and her brother was in there with her mom. And she started yelling at him, why'd you do that? And he's like, do what? She goes, why did you make those tracks? Why did you try and trick me? And he's like, what tracks? She's like, the tracks outside, the footprints. And he's like, I didn't do that. And she said that they just kind of went in the woods. They didn't follow them in or anything, but she said she was kind of upset with her brother because she thought it was him, but also kind of freaked out because it wasn't him. And, she didn't know what made them. So the more I talk to people of the surrounding areas, the more I find out that there's more going on than people let on. And to kind of stray from the Bigfoot angle, I was told that long time ago, there was a house that 3 women had lived in. I don't know if they were 3 sisters or what, but everybody referred to them as the 3 witches. That like whenever people would go past their houses or whatever, they'd always like spat out like curses or hexes. They'd always threaten people with curses. Supposedly when one of them died, they were having a wake for her at a neighboring house. And I may be getting this wrong, but I want to say that somebody said something about the one woman or something, and a broom that was in the corner of the room shot across the room and landed on the other side of the room. Also, and I don't know how true this is, but I also heard that there used to be a cabin in the woods across the street from where my farm was, where the neighbor's farm is. Back behind his property, there's farm fields, and then there was a section of woods, and there was a cabin out there. And supposedly, there was an old black hermit that used to live out there, and he never bothered anybody, and nobody ever bothered him. But the one day somebody was out hunting, and they happened upon his shack. They snooped around. He wasn't home, and they went inside. And supposedly, now keep in mind, well, supposedly they found the heads of the decapitated heads of kids. Some of them were decayed. Some of them were partially decayed. Now, keep in mind, though, that not far from there is a cemetery. So was he like a slave that came from the South and had, ties to some voodoo or something? I don't know, because he lived very secluded. Did he maybe rob the graves, and used it for whatever purposes he seemed fit? I don't know. Is that story even true? I don't know. But it was just weird because, like I said, that property is very creepy. And then I come to find out that the house that the witches lived in was actually on the property that I lived on. I don't know if it was the same exact house, but it was on the property that I lived on. So it kind of solidifies how I always felt weird on that property. And I found this out years later. I mean, actually, after I had left the house, I found out all this. So, I mean, it's not like I knew about it and it made me feel weird living there. I never knew about that until after I was gone. So there's a lot of weird connections, a lot of weird history to that area. So, and that's it in a nutshell. That's our story story of our encounters and everything. So we call that Squatch on the Farm. I don't know if it was a Bigfoot. I'm not saying it was a Bigfoot, but whatever was going on out there was pretty damn weird.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I would never say it was a Bigfoot, like Les said earlier, until I actually physically see it. But a lot of weird things, a lot of strange occurrences. That whole valley is very rich in a lot of stories of, and a lot of people that live out in that valley have lived there for, family wise for a few generations. And when you start to talk to these people, I actually know somebody that lives a little bit further out from Les's place. I didn't know where his house was at the time. I had just been talking to a guy at work, and I was like, oh yeah, I have a buddy that lives out that way somewhere. And he's like, oh, well, I live down this, down off the road over here, there's this. And then I live back in there. My whole family lives in different houses back there. And we were actually talking by a trash compactor at a private gated community. We were doing the security. My family's company was doing the security for. So we every night would have to run the trash compactor. And occasionally there would be a bear in the trash compactor. When you pulled up, you'd see bags flying out of it. And him and I were talking the one, day, and he's like, well, he goes, the bears don't bother me too much. He goes, the thing I saw down at my, down on my house, he's like, that bothered me. And I looked at him, and his name was Nelson. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. And I'm like, well, you'd be pretty much surprised what I'm capable of believing. He's like, I I think I saw Bigfoot. And I was like, okay. I don't necessarily I don't disagree with the possibility that there is such a thing as Bigfoot. So he starts telling me the stories, and his dad had, grew up in that area, and his dad had seen stuff out there, hunting and stuff like that. They would see, strange, larger than normal, you know, through like, areas passing through. They would see something bigger than, a person, but not a bear, not walking with the body being horizontal, being upright, you know. So that was somebody that I had, worked with that actually lived down the road from Les's place. At that point, I didn't know exactly where Les's was. And he told me flat out, he's like, I think I saw Bigfoot. Same valley, same area, maybe 4 miles away from Les's place at the time. So, definitely a very, very weird valley. A lot of interesting area up there. And like I said earlier, some of that valley and mountains, you cross over in any direction. You could walk 25, 30 miles in, relatively dense woods and completely never hit a town. And away a lot of the mountain runs and stuff like that, you could pretty much navigate around any towns or cities for a lot, even further than 25 or 30 miles if you knew where you were going and, were moving with the GPS and stuff like that. So it's definitely an interesting area. And I have a feeling we'll be doing some more follow-ups this summer in that area and just, getting out there, getting some video and stuff. But, it is.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No,
I was just
go
going to
ahead.
say we do have that one location. I don't want to give away the where it is exactly. All I can say is between where I live now and where I used to live. We have been getting some reports that I'm also the Eastern coordinator for the Keystone Bigfoot Project. We get a lot of reports come in. I actually followed up on one in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, just a few days ago. But we get a lot of reports. The ones that I pay particular attention to are the ones that are close to my house, which Jim Thorpe is, but I mean, very close I'm talking about. Chad and I have been planning on doing a weekend-long outing out at this certain area. I go out hiking out there with my dog all the time just to scout it out. And the one time I was going out there, it was by the old Weatherly Reservoir. And I was walking past the reservoir, and I'm just maybe 30, 40 yards from where it was. And I'm cruising along, just walking, me and my dog, and I get a whiff of this smell. And it was kind of like a sulfury, kind of mixed with like, I don't mean to be offensive, but like an old man's armpit, like really bad body odor. Like, this is going to sound horrible, but it was like pits and crotch, like, and sulfur. It was just this foul smell. And a lot of the reports that I've read and have, interactions with people, a lot of times that's what they describe the smell to be like when they have a Bigfoot encounter, is either wet dog or sulfury, eggy BO. I think Seawood had said that too, didn't he?
Yeah.
He's like take that, a stinky person, a stinky homeless person, and multiply it by 1,000 or something.
Yeah.
But
there was something that popped in my head about the audio we had played, and I know we were trying to wrap this up because I have to get up early. Yeah. There was actually audio recorded in Australia that has a lot of similarities to the audio Les recorded there in Pennsylvania. We actually sent it to a group in Australia for them to kind of, do some comparison to the sounds that they had, captured down there. And it's not a dead on, but when I heard their audio, I'm like, why are they playing Les's audio?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there and like, no, they're just playing Les's audio. And then it was a little cleaner and stuff like that. So I'm thinking, okay. And then they said where they actually recorded, and they gave the name of the guy who recorded it. He's not some famous, cryptozoologist. He's some guy in Australia that had an experience in an area where he was hunting and hiking. And, I sent it to Les. I'm like, dude, this sounds so similar to what you have. And he played it, and he's like, yeah, kind of, the here and there's some stuff definitely that's similar. So we actually sent it to them, and they were doing some, comparison noise and stuff like that. And of course, the audio version we have, again, like Les said, was from his cell phone, so it's not crystal clear like some of the audio this guy's recording. He's using some high-end, recording equipment out in the woods. But it's definitely an interesting, audio clip. But I'd like to thank my co-host Les for doing such a great show tonight. He kind of took the ball, a lot more Bigfoot than I am, and he had a lot more experiences out in that area. So I'd also like to thank you guys, the audience, for coming along on the trip.
Mm-hmm.
So Les, anything you got for him?
No, that's pretty much it. I mean, like we said before, Chad and I are planning on hitting that location where I used to live pretty heavy this summer, I'm hoping. And a couple other spots that are neighboring it, I really want to put a lot of attention to, because I've been finding stuff recently as I've been going out, because I go out squatching with my dog since my best friend left me. So I have Rocket the Wonder Pup to be my squatch buddy. But we'll keep everybody posted on what we find, if anything. We got a lot of paranormal stuff lined up for over the summer as well. But yeah, other than that, like Chad said, thank you everybody so very much for tuning in. We appreciate each and every one of you. Your kind words are very much appreciated in the comments and whatnot. So thank you very much for listening and hanging out. And Chad, as always, my best friend, my co-host. Have a good one, buddy. And I'll talk to you later.
Next week, are we gonna?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Don't forget. Go ahead.
Next week we'll actually have a very special guest on, Andy McGrath, author of Beast of Britain. We had him booked a few months ago, and we took a week off. We had some stuff come up. We will have him next week. As always, you can reach us, on our website at www.explorersgroup.com, or on Twitter at Explorers Group, or on Facebook at Explorers Group / never mind. That would be
Facebook / Explorers Group.
Yeah, that would be
we're
it.
on iTunes too, so if you guys want to take us with you on the road, we're on iTunes.
And
Just
always,
go on iTunes and search Explorers Secrets of the Truth.
And feel free, to share the show around if you like it. If you know somebody that may be interested, share it to them. We greatly appreciate it. So, as always, we will see you guys next week. Same, time, 8:30 Thursday night. Until then, have a great week.
Good night, everyone.